Each year, the City Club is pleased to present the High School Debate Championships with our regular high school student program and Youth Forum series as part of our significant and continuing commitment to the youth of our community. Good afternoon and welcome to this special forum. My name is Jan Roller and I am President of the Board of Trustees of the City Club. We are proud of these remarkable young people and are delighted to give this program the full forum treatment with radio and television broadcasts so the entire greater Cleveland area can share in the celebration of their intellect and talent. We are especially pleased to have the continuing support of the law firm of Baker Hostetler for this program. And I'd like to ask John Parker of the firm to come to the podium, please, for a few words. Please welcome John Parker.
Thank you. On behalf of Baker and Hostetler, it is indeed an honor and a privilege for us to sponsor this high school debate championship in memory of our late partner, Pat Jordan. When I was thinking about why it's important to our firm to sponsor this debate, I was reminded of an Aesop's fable I heard as a child. And in that fable, the animals of the forest had gathered by a stream in the springtime, and were talking about how many offspring they had. The fox boasted that she'd had 5 kits that summer, and the rabbit said, well, that's nothing, I had 9 bunnies. A salmon that was in the stream and had listened to all this said, well, you should be proud to learn that I had over 1,000 hatchlings this spring. Then the animals noticed the lioness who was sitting over on the side, and they asked her, they said, Your Highness, how many cubs did you have this spring? And she said, I had but one, but he was a lion. And Aesop used that fable to illustrate that quality is paramount. And it's indeed the qualities that debate helps our young people develop that is so important to Baker and Hostetler. And they were qualities that our late partner, Pat Jordan, exhibited so well. He was an outstanding high school debater at St. Ignatius, an accomplished trial lawyer both in the Manhattan's DA's office, and then subsequently as our partner at Baker and Hostetler, and he was our dear friend. As a result, it is particularly my pleasure today to introduce to you his daughter, Ann Jordan, who's going to explain and introduce the debate to you. Ann herself is an accomplished high school student at Laurel School, where she has a whole list of accomplishments that I won't all name, but she is her class secretary. She's a member of, or been selected to participate in To Look Up to Cleveland, which for us older folks is the high school equivalent of Leadership Cleveland. She's on our community service board, and she is herself an accomplished member of their speech and debate team. I understand that recently Ann participated at a national speech tournament at the University of Pennsylvania where she made the finals in oral interp and placed 6th. So it is indeed my pleasure to introduce to you Ann Jordan.
It is my distinct honor to once again introduce the City Club High School Debate Championship, sponsored by the law firm Baker and Hostetler. It is wonderful to see my father's memory represented in such a unique and fantastic event, as I know that he was quite passionate about his own experiences debating and attributed much of his success later in life to those experiences. I am doubly honored this year, however, because I get to introduce to you one of my very own classmates and Laurel's first ever competitor in this distinguished debate. This is a contest in Lincoln-Douglas debate. The competitors will be debating a proposition of value, specifically resolved. Economic sanctions ought not to be used to achieve foreign policy objectives. The affirmative debater will speak first and then be questioned by the negative debater. Then the negative debater will speak and the affirmative debater will question. There will then be a rebuttal offered by the affirmative and a rebuttal by the negative. Finally, the affirmative will have the last word of final rebuttal. The judges for the debate will be Mr. Robert Schertz, debate coach of Hawkins School, Ms. Sharon McGraw, debate coach at Orange High School and Horizon Science Academy, and Mr. Sheldon Braverman of the City Club. I am now pleased to introduce to you the 2 debaters. First, on the affirmative from University School, Prasan Srinivasan, and second, on the negative from Laurel School, my classmate, Sonja Postak. So, if the judges and debaters are ready, I wish you both the best of luck and invite you to begin.
All right. Before I'd like to begin, I'd like to thank the following people for their encouragement and support throughout the season and acknowledge their important role in helping me get here. My parents, of course, the rest of the U.S. speech and debate team, particularly Evan Meisler, our LD captain this year, and Vinay Prasad, the former LD captain last year, and Amy Dinsmore, the LD debate coach at U.S., and Peter Pegg, the speech and debate head coach. I'd also like to thank the City Club for hosting this debate and everyone in the audience for coming down to watch. Okay, so if everyone's ready, I'd like to begin. I affirm the resolution resolved that economic sanctions ought not be used to achieve foreign policy objectives. I define the following terms. Ought is used to express justice, moral rightness, and the like, and sanctions as the deliberate withdrawal of normal trade relations for foreign policy purposes. My value will be that of justice, defined as giving each his due. Since the word ought in the resolution asks us to evaluate economic sanctions with the ideas of justness and morality in mind, justice is the ideal weighing mechanism for the round. Justice is also inherently valuable because it's a fair and universal weighing mechanism. My value criterion will be the protection of human rights, defined as fundamental rights, especially those believed to belong to an individual and in whose exercise a government may not interfere. Human rights are inherently due to everybody and are therefore necessary to achieve justice. My first contention is that economic sanctions violate these human rights. There's a basic hypocrisy, a sort of counterintuitiveness when it comes to the use of sanctions. On one hand, they allegedly seek to maintain the peace and protect human rights, but at the same time, sanctions always end up harming the human rights of the civilians affected. Sanctions will always violate far more human rights than they ever protect for three reasons. First, because by refusing to continue to have normal trade relations with the country, we ensure that their population endures immense poverty. In these conditions, people will be unable to fully exercise their rights and privileges. As a paper by Dr. Hans Kochler at the University of Innsbruck explains, the poverty caused by sanctions inhibits the full realization of human rights. And additionally, sanctions deny people who've done nothing wrong the basic right to development. This is especially the case when we sanction things like food, water, and basic medical supplies. Our actions end up causing immense death and suffering, harming the people instead of the government. Secondly, sanctions are a form of collective punishment, in that they punish the whole population of a country for the actions of its leaders. Citizens of the target nation suffer as a direct result of sanctions, though they themselves have not committed any crime, an eventuality contrary to the principles of justice. And third and finally, sanctions will always violate far more human rights than they ever protect, because any possible benefits that may be derived from them are outweighed by the direct harm they may also do. Killing cannot be considered just because of a possibly worthy intention, and likewise, the use of sanctions cannot be justified by its potential benefits. In Iraq, for example, sanctions have ended up causing the deaths of over 500,000 innocents. Considering the magnitude of the suffering that results from them, sanctions are not a justified policy either. My second contention is that economic sanctions are ineffective. Not only do sanctions always end up harming human rights, as shown in contention 1, but they fail to prove successful in achieving even the simplest intended goals in regards to human rights improvements. The authors of Economic Sanctions Reconsidered, Hufbauer, Schott, Egg, and Elliott, having done a detailed analysis of all the sanctions used in the 20th century, estimate that only 34% of them have actually worked in achieving their respective policy goals. So most often, the thousands of deaths that they result in are in vain, as nothing positive is achieved more than half the time. The U.S.'s embargo against Cuba is a good example of a completely ineffective sanction. Though our policies have been in place for decades, our sanctions have failed to result in any sort of democratic reform. But additionally, the sender state often suffers greatly by applying these sorts of sanctions. It's estimated that the many sanctions the U.S. has applied have lost us from $15 to $19 billion in possible exports. Comparing the effectiveness of sanctions and how rarely they yield results to the many drawbacks and financial costs they incur for the sender state, it's clear they're ineffective policies. And again, taking into consideration the costs in regards to human rights, there cannot be any possible justification in using sanctions. Looking again to sanctions imposed by the UN against Iraq in the 90s, which did not result in the dethroning of Saddam, they still managed to cause severe harm to the people, with conservative estimates saying that the death rate over a 10-year period then more than doubled, from 50 deaths per 100,000 to 117 deaths per 100,000.